So how lovely to gather this morning to dwell on Bodhicitta, that extraordinary word that we do not have an exact word in English that can actually indicate its depth. I'd like to start this morning with the Bodhicitta prayer. And most often we think of this as a dedication prayer, but it is essentially all times everyday prayer. Let's just put that in the chat. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. So I'm sure Sue talked about the word bodhicitta, the awakened heart mind, that we think of as a spectrum of growth throughout our life that has no end, no boundary, no limit to how vast it can become. And so if you look at this prayer, there is a sense of understanding. First, we need to touch base with it and see it in our own heart mind. Then as we touch base with it, we want to nurture it, make sure it doesn't decline, and help it grow continuously. And so I want to particularly emphasize that we're talking about a spectrum that begins with just our very first intention. And where we're starting today is exactly the right place. We're not supposed to be any place else other than where we're starting today. So I reflected on why bodhicitta is such not only such a precious mind, but so inspiring. Many people find that this is their doorway to the Dharma. And that was true for me, particularly in the Mahayana. The pervasive teaching of bodhicitta begins and ends every teaching and pervades every single teaching. And growing up in this particular culture, the thought that there is a extraordinary aspect that is in my mind and can grow is quite something to take in. I think in our culture, Judeo-Christian culture starts with the sense that there is some original sin quality. And even if we haven't encountered it, there is a philosophical root that colors our culture. And in this philosophical system, it's an original blessing. And that original blessing is our nature. And we could say it is the seed of bodhicitta and the fulfilled bodhicitta. And that each and every one of us has that seed of bodhicitta. So that is the starting point. Even if we haven't felt it directly, that seed is within. And even if we can't see it in ourselves in an active way, it is our nature. And so our life's journey is uncovering that seed and allowing it to shine forth. And I think the time in my life and the strength that I encountered it in a direct way with people I knew came from my work as a hospice volunteer. And I took a 3-month period and decided I wanted to understand how hospice nurses did what they did, how they had such a loving heart and could come in and just be so gentle and kind with strangers and take such gentle care of people. I was so impressed with a hospice nurse who worked with a friend of mine when I had encountered death directly. So it was in my 30s or 40s. And I went down to the Connecticut hospice, and it was a very interesting place. It was a 65-bed hospice, and half the people died every week. And so they created, it was the first hospice in the US, and they created a program in the beginning that addressed the needs of the nurses and staff to a degree, along with the patients. So their philosophical premise for their business was to include the people who worked there. And as I got to know the nurses, I just was so impressed that they would choose for their life's work every day to go in to do that kind of care. I thought, what extraordinary altruism that is. That, you know, it's one thing to take care of a friend or someone in your family, but to say, I'm going to do it every day with all kinds of people I absolutely do not know. And as I got to know the nurses and established a sense of trust with them, it came to be revealed that they were at a point of crisis. The whole nursing team was at a point of crisis. It was during the AIDS massive death period. So many people were dying, so many people were coming to the hospice and dying fairly quickly. And these people who were so good-hearted, who had, you know, such extraordinary altruistic intention, found that they could not sustain that intention over time. They didn't know how to. They didn't have the skills to do that. And what they were doing was, at the moment of death, they saw themselves making an excuse to go away from the bedside. And of course, when we're taking care of our loved ones, that sometimes happens. And of course, as human beings, we get exhausted. But these nurses could see that they were repeating a pattern, and it was something that hadn't been named. They named it multiple death burnout. And until they started talking about it, each individually saw their intentions, saw their good heart, saw what they were doing, and went into a spiral of crushing shame, just crushing shame. And I made a vow at that time to myself that there must be a way that these wonderful people were missing some piece of training that we did not know about in our culture. And there must be some teaching that allowed people to sustain their altruism. And although I had encountered Buddhism, it was one of the turning points in my life of going deeper into Buddhism. Every culture, of course, every culture teaches kindness and compassion. And every culture, every religion has nuances. And, you know, it may be that there are many places that teach similar trainings, but what I found in Buddhism was a particular intention to how to grow and nurture bodhicitta, and how to have confidence that your own seed has the potential to be a great tree, and a step-by-step training. So you are actually studying the greatest text in Mahayana Buddhism. It is studied by all the traditions. It is memorized. It is taught continuously. So this is one of the great texts that takes that step by step, identifying what bodhicitta is, seeing all the human responses as we start to grow that bodhicitta, and giving, I love Shantideva because it's like encountering his personal pep talk as he grows over time and explores every aspect of bodhicitta. And I think I was drawn to the Tibetan Buddhist area for many reasons, but most particularly, we still have access to a generation of teachers who not only became accomplished in bodhicitta, but they were tested in the most extreme circumstances, like Martin Luther King, like Nelson Mandela. People were coming out of Tibet, ordinary monks, as well as some of the great Rinpoches, saying their biggest challenge was to maintain bodhicitta in all of the circumstances with the takeover by the Chinese soldiers, all of the suffering in the, the same old human story of one group oppressing another group. And then all of the suffering they encountered in their pilgrimage as refugees to find safety. And because so many teachers from Tibet were coming to India and then to the West, at this period, now still, we have a way to accept the invitation to train in their footsteps. How did they develop such a great heart and mind that they did not lose their bodhicitta, and in fact use the difficult circumstances to expand their bodhicitta? So we can say that this philosophical system has at its very root the view that every being with mind, that in fact the nature of mind is inseparable from bodhicitta. It's a part of it, like a heat is a part of fire. So you can't separate the mind that is aware from the heat at its very nature. We don't often experience it quite like this, though. So the system demonstrates that although that is our mind, although that is our nature, it is covered over. And we need to find that spark and nurture that spark. So it's a little like the Olympics. Yet again, the Winter Olympics happened. Yet again, I saw beautiful ice skaters. And I can say, I have a body, just like the ice skaters have a body. I live in Maine, just a lot of ice. I have the potential, I absolutely have the potential to become an Olympic ice skater. I am not an Olympic ice skater. I am really far away from being an Olympic ice skater because I have not developed that intention strongly enough to even buy ice skates. So we are starting with, how does the intention begin to open our willingness to train and our willingness to devote more and more of our life and attention to this training, so that we have the capacity to fulfill that intention or that aspiration of bodhicitta to the degree that our heart mind is of the same strength of our greatest heroes. It could be Mother Teresa, it could be Nelson Mandela, it could be Martin Luther King, it could be the Dalai Lama. We have that same Olympic potential within us. Okay, so I'm going to put another verse in the chat room. So this is a verse you may have encountered. It's in the first chapter. Bodhicitta, the awakening mind, in brief, is said to have two aspects. First, bodhicitta in intention, then active bodhicitta practical engagement. Wishing to depart and setting out upon the road, this is how the difference is conceived. The wise and the learned thus should understand the difference, which is ordered and progressive. So very wisely, Shantideva sets out in the very beginning, first you have to know what ice skating is. Then you have to know if there's a pond and is the ice frozen. Then you have to actually buy the ice skates. Then you have to get on the pond. And maybe, I would want someone holding my hand the whole time. And then if I went to the ice skating rink every day for hours, starting when I was 15, yes, I could become an Olympic ice skater. But without all of the steps, it'd be ludicrous for me to just go out on the ice today not knowing anything. I would break all my bones. So Shantideva is saying, all right, let's just start at the beginning. Let's start with the intention. Let's learn about that intention. We may not even have at this moment the same intention that those hospice nurses had. I didn't when I was a younger person. So we have to start even with what does it mean to allow that intention to arise in our hearts? And where can we meet a felt experience of our own bodhicitta? And it's so interesting. One of the stories about the Buddha in the previous lives, when they went back in time to see where did his first intention of bodhicitta arise, that over lifetimes became the great vast heart that we're exploring now. What was the first beginning? And they tell a story about two oxen in the hell realms. And, you have to think of it like a dramatic movie, like, you're in the fire and, pitchforks are stabbing you and you're pulling a heavy load of, rocks or something, and you're the ox and the heavy yoke is on your neck and you're trudging along and you're just totally miserable. So with all that drama, yes, we would be focusing on our own suffering. But they said the first impulse of bodhicitta in the many lifetimes of the Buddha was just for a second. He had a brief thought, if for a moment I could lift the load of the ox beside me. It may be that that ox stumbled. It may be that he could just sense for a moment that someone else was there. And if for a moment he could take a little of that load. So that's the starting point. That is that flicker. And so when you think of the flicker in our minds as we experience it, you can see how, I'm going to say human, but we're not thinking of mind as human only. We're extending it to all living beings with mind. But we can think in terms of our own human mind, what happens when we have that first flicker of, oh, if I could lift the load for a minute, and then immediately fear enters. We know that from what we're experiencing today with seeing the images of the war in Ukraine. We feel helpless. we feel, well, if I took on one more part of a heavy load, I'd be overwhelmed. How could I possibly, I don't have the skills or the capacity. What if, if I took on the one more of a load, what if I collapse? Immediately fear overwhelms us. So I want to just acknowledge that so that we see how tender that little flicker is and how important it is to understand that all kinds of other thoughts immediately intervene. And it's as though our heart opens a teeny tiny little bit and then we slam the door shut. And that this is the starting point. Many of you may be more advanced and have done a lot of training, but still seeing even more subtly how the door of our heart opens and how the door of our heart closes is a lifelong journey because there's no end to the exploration. So I want to work with that flicker and invite you to find a way to touch base with it in a way that you can experience. And to start out by saying, if you're in a very difficult situation right now, it is simply guidelines that you may use over a longer period of time. But we're going to look at lots of different ways that we can approach that flicker. And part of it has to do with starting to have a little bit of confidence in our Buddha nature. So this may be a foreign concept to you, but I'm going to invite you to just settle in with it might be true, and what would it be like if I could begin with the confidence that this is my nature, even though I can't see it, even though it's covered over. And one of the stories that struck me this week that I thought would be helpful, you all probably heard about it. There was an American couple who had a surrogate mother who gave birth to twins in the Ukraine. And the father found a way to get the babies out of the Ukraine and to get the mother safe. So if we look at what happened in that scenario, there was a sense that the father could first open because he had a sense that this is my family. So when we have a sense that this is my family, it's very conditional, but still it is bigger than just us. So part of the journey is to see how we define what is my family and what is safe for me to open to. And then we know when we have this sense of this is my family, then we can go to great lengths. Then there is a power in the warmth that allows us to do quite enormous action. But let's keep with, there's that sense of warmth and opening with a perceived kind of boundary of safety. So we move from ourself outwards in that safety. And probably you have experienced this. Anybody who has an animal companion has experienced the moment where all of a sudden this is your dog or your cat and your heart fully opens to that dog or cat. So we're looking at where do we see and experience that heart opening with warmth? Enough so that we drop the separation or drop the boundary between self and other just a little bit in what we perceive is going to be a safe situation for ourselves. So we're looking at that, cracking open the door and that moment where that warmth just blossoms. And it might be just a tiny little spark, but there's that sense of now you're willing, you're perhaps not ready to fly to Poland and have a team go through the war to get that sweet little dog, but many people are rescuing from floods and other disasters. So you do have some way of connecting from that perspective. I suspect maybe at least a third of you have animal companions. So there is a sense of safety and a sense of the me-ness expanding and incorporating. And let's keep with the example of the animal companion, because it's so helpful for many people. Not only are you offering, you're opening that little door of your heart and you're offering warmth. Animals are so helpful because they are a way for us to experience unconditional love. So the bodhicitta aspect can come from a feeling on your side, or it can come from a feeling of being loved. So I'm going to invite us now to sit for a minute and just reflect on our lives when we were able to touch one side or the other, either loving or being loved, receiving love. So it may be that you do have a close relationship in your family. It may be that you have a teacher who's extended love to you. It may be that you have an animal companion. It may be that you have sweet little toddlers and grandchildren, but we're just looking for a flicker of warmth that arises in our hearts, whether it's received or extended. And let's just reflect on where today we might touch base with just that spark. So this starts to be a very interesting exploration. For some people, there's an immediate memory. For some people, you see, oh, this relationship is more complicated than I thought. In fact, we advise people not to use their beloved partners because for almost everyone, that's complicated. We know in our Western culture, people have fairly complicated relationships with their parents. So as you're looking through your relationship and your memories, there may not be immediately available some memory that allows you to have a felt sense of just softening, relaxing, and opening. That's what we're looking for, a softening, relaxing, opening that has a little pulse of warmth. And one of the most moving examples I've ever seen, I can still, be present in the auditorium. The Dalai Lama was teaching in an auditorium in Pittsburgh a long time ago, and they brought a group of juvenile offenders. And finally, one of the young women raised her hand and said to the Dalai Lama, he was giving a talk on bodhicitta, what if I have never experienced this? What if there's no memory? What if there's just nothing when I try to find that spark? And the Dalai Lama was extraordinary. He looked at her and he walked off the stage and walked down the aisle in the auditorium and just hugged her. And it was extraordinary for many reasons. You can imagine he usually travels with a bodyguard, and as a monk, he's never supposed to touch women. And the wonderful thing about bodhicitta is that it is the guiding principle that's more important than anything else. So there is always an exception if there's purity of bodhicitta, that he would just walk into the audience and hug her. So if it's difficult for you this morning to find a memory, you can always think of someone you greatly admire and put a picture near you or put a picture on your altar. For many of us who have spiritual teachers, whenever we meet that teacher, they're gazing at us with the eyes of bodhicitta, with that just complete love, this love we describe as like a mother for her only beloved child. For some people, it may be a historic person. For some people, it may be even something like the sun. It may be nature. That you can feel so accepted, that you can feel that you can drop your barriers and be exactly who you are in this moment, that there is no part of you that is so objectionable that you cannot receive a loving glance from this being. So let's work with that a little bit. What does it like to be on the receiving end, whether it's the sun, whether it's your spiritual teacher, whether it's someone in your life? Can you feel the spark of response of your heart softening, opening, and feeling a warmth arising on the receiving end? The interesting thing about our wonderful spiritual teachers, like the father of the Ukrainian newborns who saw those babies as his family and moved heaven and earth to bring those babies to safety, our spiritual teachers have trained themselves in nurturing bodhicitta to the degree that they see each and every being, they see each and every life as their beloved only child, that same warmth, undifferentiated from any living being. So there is a sense of no separation, no boundary whatsoever, not even from the perspective of the great spiritual teachers, someone who is looking with loving eyes at someone. Their mental space has entered bodhicitta in the same way fire and heat are inseparable. So we're looking at how to touch base with that spark. And many of you are in the Rochester area. I'm in Maine. We probably have had some experience with a wood stove or starting a fire. So you think of that little flicker, that little spark, and how tenderly you have to take care of that. At least you've seen it in a movie. So there's that tiny little spark and you put something really soft and then add little soft things so it gets bigger and bigger, and then it can take bigger twigs and you have to watch it really carefully and blow on it. So you have to take really good care of it. So this is what we're doing in meditation when we're learning about our bodhicitta practice. We're learning to see the spark, that we have a felt experience where our hearts soften and open and start to blossom in a warmth. And it can be received from another being that our heart responds in that way, or it can be when we see another being, our heart responds in that way. So I'm thinking of the cat lovers. Cats are not as demonstrative as dogs, but the cat lovers see the cat and they have that responsive opening. The example that His Holiness uses is seeing in your imagination a cherubic toddler laughing, just giggling, just able to walk and coming towards you, or you can imagine that as an animal companion, and how you don't have any judgment. You drop the self-referencing, that there's an impulse of reaching towards, and it's not just that physically you want to hug that cute little laughing being, but it's the physicality of the heart also pulsing towards. So for many people, that's a helpful example. And I don't want you to worry if you haven't found some example that works for you in this moment, just to encourage you to explore and to not apply any kind of harshness of I should be able to do this, I should be able to do it today, why don't I have something like this? Have curiosity about where is my starting point going to be? It's the time of year where we're all going out and buying little packets of seeds. So what kind of a seed are you going to start with, and how can you just plant your little seed that's going to be different than my little seed? And we're just going to find what seed that we're going to start with. We're not worried about any of the other bigger issues of, could we fly to Poland? We're just looking at that impulse of softening, warmth, arising, pulsing out. And let's even say it doesn't even need to be pulsing out, just the sense of filling. In the same way, if your example is nature and you're feeling the sun on your skin and you're warming your bones after a long winter, that softness, that warmth, that openness, you're safe with this particular memory, you're safe with the sun. The sun isn't asking you to do anything. This memory isn't asking you to do anything. We're just going to that felt experience and sitting with it. And as it is, if you're still searching for a felt experience, then that's what you do in this moment. So one of the lovely things is we can help ourselves with this in terms of the felt experience. So you want to make sure you're sitting up straight. I'm going to sit up straight. And if you take your arms and just move your arms back and forth like this, very slowly, move your arms really, really slowly. You might feel somatically that there is a opening of your chest area, opening of your, as though your ribs weren't there, just a physical opening of your heart area. And another body assist is simply smiling. So allow yourself to sit still and change your facial expression into a very gradual smile. So you may find that it's not nature, it's not an interpersonal, it's a body experience that just gives you a difference between being closed and being open. And trust that quality of just the difference of physical opening, or the difference of the change of sense of your mental space when you smile. Let's try that, just smiling. The training from our particular lineage, in addition to Shantideva, is contacting that felt experience and staying right there. And coming back over and over again to that felt experience, moment after moment after moment. So many of you have had some introduction to meditation. It might be being aware of your breath and breathing in and out. It might be saying a mantra where you're focusing on a word. But what we're going to do this morning is take that flicker, that felt experience, however you've touched it, and say, okay, I'm going to come back to that over and over again. That is going to be the focus of my attention. And in this particular training, not only is the instruction to smile as a sonomic assist, but it's also to put your right hand on your right knee and your left hand in your lap, the position that you see the Buddha in most in terms of the historic Buddha. And this is called the touching the earth mudra. So when he became enlightened, the lack of trust manifesting as an aggressor was, how can you prove that you're enlightened? And he touched the earth and said, the earth is my witness. So for today, I'd like you to experiment with the touching the earth mudra as I'm touching the earth in trust that bodhicitta is my nature and my witness, that there is a presence, and I'm touching the earth as a touching confidence in this extraordinary teaching that our minds are none other than bodhicitta at root. So in that position and smiling, like it's a little spark that you're building into a fire, touch base with that softening, that warmth, that quality of filling, and that quality of pulsing, reverberating, and come back to it over and over again, that that's your object of meditation. That's your base that you're returning to. You notice when you let go of it, when the sensation evaporates, and you come back over and over to that, and just that. So immediately it's evident that our minds jump around a lot. It's quite subtle, and our minds get distracted very easily. So we begin to go through a kind of sorting process. So rather than go from story to story to story, select one thing. It may be today you're going to try the sun. It may be today you're going to try your animal companion. It absolutely doesn't matter. You're starting with just one thing and you're noticing the felt experience, the warmth and pulse. So it's not about the story. It's that felt heart softening with warmth, that openness. It's as though you're not even cracked the door open yet. You're just letting the warmth build up that it starts to swing open on its own. So start with just one thing and say, okay, today is a great day to experiment. I'm going to try just one thing, and I'm not going to focus on the story. I'm going to see how the story leads me to a felt experience. How can I stay in that felt experience? And then when that felt experience dissipates, you might go back to that same story again, not a different one, and see if you can generate that felt experience. You're trying to make a map for you to get to that felt experience and stay in that felt experience. That soft, open, undefended heart. We're all in safe places right now. We're sitting in our nice warm homes, so we can be undefended and just see what that feels like. Okay, let's work with, again, one story, that soft, vibrating, filling, and undefended. So this process is deeply healing and affects us in a lot of different ways. So in the same way, when we're thinking of seeing the pictures on the TV and seeing the Ukraine, we have this compassion that arises seeing the suffering, followed by immediately, I can't do anything, it's too overwhelming, et cetera, et cetera. When we are doing this work of filling up with bodhicitta and contacting that bodhicitta, we also can encounter all kinds of feelings of I'm not truly lovable. And the importance and significance of the philosophical base of Buddha nature, that each and every being with mind is a seed of perfection. No matter what has happened to them, no matter what they have done, at nature essence is Buddha nature entirely lovable. And so we can start to test out how in my own being do I feel so impoverished in terms of being able to receive love, hold love, or feeling lovable. What are the different kinds of things that arise in my mind? And can I set that aside, trusting the Buddha nature that we are perfectly lovable and perfectly capable, and we need to soften to our own belief about ourselves. It's not only the fear of doing something for someone else, risking getting hurt, it's taking in, I've been hurt, and I need to soften and reclaim the perfection within, the perfectly lovable within. Over time, there'll be ways to look at all those different aspects that come up in terms of, you know, why we might feel this or that. But for now, if we can begin to think in the same way our animal companions are not rejecting us, the sun is not rejecting us, and just in the sense of warming and thawing our own belief in our own lovability, so that we can really deeply have that felt sense, not blocked by a false view of ourself and not afraid of something outside. Can we touch that, even if it's just tentatively? What would it be like to soften my heart in an undefended way towards myself? So keep noticing how your own unique mind is responding, how quickly we start telling ourselves a story or a narrative about what we're doing. And let's go back to the just physical qualities. So moving your shoulders, you can bring your shoulders back, rotate them back and feel the opening of your body, moving your arms back and forth, feeling an energetic opening of your body. And every time in meditation, when you start to see the narrative or the story arise, go back to that felt experience. Let's try the smile again. So we're receiving not a conceptual story, but a felt experience. We're thinking of the pulse outward, not as a story about our sweet little animal companion, but the feeling you get when you open the door, having been away, and this laughing greeting that's so unconditional arises as animal companion, and you have a felt response. So closer and closer to the felt response, and allow that felt response to permeate in a way that is accepting of every part of you. Think of those wonderful nurses from hospice. If they were here with us today, we'd say, "Oh, honey, please don't go into shame. Honey, you are so wonderful. I see your goodness. I see your altruism." Say that to yourself. I see your spark. Honey, let yourself just be filled. So just acknowledging that it takes some investigation to find a beginning point to begin to fill with bodhicitta. It takes time to learn how to focus on that spark and have your concentration develop so that you can maintain a focus on that spark. And the whole development begins with one little spark and it expands limitlessly. So I want to go back to the prayer that I began with. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. And if you're in deep healing today, and if only you had the aspiration to learn how to identify the felt sense. Imagine the Dalai Lama is on the stage and he's seeing you and he's seeing you are a baby Buddha. You are a Buddha to be. I can see that aspiration in you, and I'm so overjoyed that you have the aspiration that I'm going to walk down and hug you. So let's let's switch to gallery view. And for a moment, give each other a visual hug. Just rejoice that all of us are together today with the aspiration to develop our bodhicitta in this world that is so filled with difficulty and suffering, that even the aspiration is precious. And we have confidence that that aspiration will grow limitlessly, that it is the seed that is catching fire. And because it's our nature, has the capacity to grow and will grow. And even if it was difficult for you, you can rejoice that you're with people who are sitting with the same aspiration that you have in a tradition where it's seen to be everybody's pure potential. So we can, for today, take on the confidence of the Dalai Lama that it's all of our potentials. Not only is it our potential, it's the same potential. I could not become an Olympic ice skater, but I could become as vast as heart as the Dalai Lama, because I have the intention and I'm setting that intention into motion. So I think this is a good resting point for today. Miriam, if you'd like to do the closing prayers, and then we have time for discussion.
Thank you, Ken, for these valuable things. Thank you, everyone. Dharma Ref will be making an offering to Vajra in appreciation for Khenmo's speech. We want Sangha to also make an offering to Vajra Dakini. The link is in the chat. Dharma teachings are offered freely. They are medicine, and we wish to make them available to everyone. Participants are invited to offer dana, an ancient Pali word meaning generosity, giving, or gift. Dana is not at all like paying for a class. Rather, it is an open-hearted trust that, as students benefit from the Dharma, a wish to bring the same benefit to others arises in them. Monastics like Khenmo vow to dedicate their lives to teaching the Dharma and are solely supported by Dana. Additionally, our administration operations that create our practice and study opportunities are funded by your Dana. Further, when we offer Dana to abbesses, rinpoches, and other teachers, our donations are not to an individual person. Instead, our donations support their nunneries and monasteries, the resident monastics, and all their future programs, activities, and Dharma offerings. This carries immeasurable blessings as we become a part of offering the healing medicine of the Dharma. Today, we are dedicating the merit of our practice to all who are suffering from the impacts of COVID, isolation, injustice, climate change, and every form of distress and conflict. If you have someone in need, please call them to mind and feel free to say their names to yourself. Bodhicitta Dedication Prayer. May Bodhicitta, precious and sublime, arise where it has not yet come to be, and where it has arisen, may it never wane, but grow and flourish, and ever more and more. Before we close, there are a few announcements. We are planning to have 2 spring retreats as a part of the spring retreat series with Khenmo Drolma at Dharma Refuge. Link for retreat information has been posted in the chat. And the next study with the Sangha session will be again with Khenmo. And now our closing prayer. For as long as space endures, and for as long as living beings remain, until then, may I too abide to dispel the miseries of the world. Thank you everyone for being here. You're welcome to join us in our virtual tea room for Q&A with Khenmo. And now I hand it back to you, Khenmo. And thank you again for being with us this morning.
I just want to add something real quickly for our participants. I don't know why we're getting an echo today, but we keep getting them. Anyway, if you don't want to be, like if you have a question and you don't want to be specifically identified, just put your question in the chat and I'll make sure to know your question.
Okay, thoughts, reflections, questions? Sue?
Okay, we're getting echo. Catherine, is there I have my original sound off. Can you change something?
I'm looking. I
Khenmo, I want to turn original sound off as well. It's up in the top of your window. It's a little toggle. Okay, there's an improvement already. Am I not echoing now?
No,
Okay.
you're not echoing at all. The echo's gone. So whatever that was, that fixed it.
All I
Oops.
did was mute myself.
Oh, try turning your original off. Do you know how to do it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm still getting an echo. Maybe try and mute yourself. Oh, I don't, yeah, so we'll have,
Anytime you have two, like have not only your video, like two devices open, a phone and your computer, that often does it when there's like two microphones. Like I don't seem to be echoing right now.
no,
Okay, you're not echoing now.
okay,
Oh, now you are.
okay.
We'll do the best we can, talk slowly, and I will in the background see if I can fix it.
Khenmo, can you turn your mic off?
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it's related to your mic, maybe? I don't know.
So sorry, that's too bad.
It didn't happen at all while you were teaching.
No.
So, which I just wanted to thank you for that incredible, beautiful teaching. And I feel so joyful that you were here to share this with the Sangha. And it fits so beautifully with what we've been studying. And we, just to say to everyone, we were doing this practice on generating a field of refuge or a field of care. And this fits in so beautifully with that. So Khenmo really slowed us right down and brought us into finding that spark and then connecting over and over with it. And I love, Khenmo, that you talked about bodhicitta as an original blessing. And I found myself turning when I experienced an aspect or part of self that couldn't receive, that image of the Dalai Lama going and hugging this person, I just sent, like I felt the Dalai Lama coming in for all of us. And that was so, talk about having an embodied experience of bodhicitta. That was just really powerful. I used that as an assist in my practice. So I wanted to thank you for that. It's a beautiful, beautiful teaching.
I think of that, I think of Pittsburgh and that they bust in group from the local juvenile delinquent center. And what an amazing experience it was for that. Well, it was for everyone, but for that young woman who had no memory or anything in her experience to touch base with. It was extraordinary to witness.
We worked with the realms a little bit last time in reflecting on precious human birth. And I posted in our resources a little teaching by Thich Nhat Hanh on the hungry ghosts. And when you were describing that young woman in the audience, it made me think of the teaching that Thich Nhat Hanh did about hungry ghosts, that sometimes you can see a human being that where that spark is so obscured, you almost sense they're not a full human being. And I just thought of that teaching and thought, oh, the Dalai Lama just like awakened this being, I think, in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Khenmo, thank you so much for that marvelous teaching. It really was heart opening, and one thing that stood out for me was when you mentioned that we have a sense of original sin in our culture. I think that's really true. I hadn't really thought about that, but it seems that we do. We are extremely critical of ourselves in our culture. We know that. So we have a sense of original something lacking in us, something a little guilty. We have it, I think, for ourselves. We feel that it's true for our nation and for all of humanity in a way, rather than looking for kind of the flaws so much, to look for the innocence. I think that just opened up for me. Thank you so much.
So Robert has his hand up.
Rob, we can't hear you.
You're muted again. Can you try unmuting? Let me. We can't hear you.
Maybe you can put it in the chat room.
Exactly.
Rob, you could also check your microphone setting under the audio settings and make sure it's set to pick up, you have a microphone picking up your voice. Yeah, maybe if there's something you can type in chat, Rob.
Yeah, so Kelly, why don't you go ahead and unmute, and Rob will be looking for your question in the chat room.
Okay. Thank you so much. My battery went out, so if I go out, it's because of that. Khenmo, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I spent most of that crying, and I'm an end-of-life doula, and to be with the dying person and being witness to their pain and their suffering, and it's the most intimate of relationships because you hear everything of all their experiences and their deep down, their admittances, and to be with them with the keeping the oxen, the cover over of my own things, and to go be present with them without my thing, and to be witness. And they are my teachers. They absolutely are my teachers, and to be looking for family, and this Sangha is my family and my safety. And I have my dog. She was present, and I have a dog and a horse, and they are my teachers and my love and my warmth and support. The spark, I lit my Palo Santo and had to nurture that ember for that. So I just got so much from your talk. I so appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, Marcia?
You're muted, Marcia.
Khenmo, first of all, thank you so much for this beautiful teaching. And some of us have had the privilege of experiencing some sustainable compassion training, and that's been very therapeutic for me as a person. Your teaching today helped me make the absolute connection between bodhicitta and sustainable compassion training. So it opened up a whole new chapter for me, and I want to thank you for that.
I love that it goes on forever. I don't know if you heard about the second stage of the father to the two twins. Now that the babies are safe, the surrogate mother was coming to safety, and he's using all the organization of putting together the process of getting the babies to safety to send medicine into Ukraine. So his expansion is getting more and more incorporating the country into his family instead of staying with the babies and the surrogate mother. So that's a good example of the extending. Okay, last thoughts. All right, I'm going to see if I can play a video of the youngest nuns singing the Bodhicitta song in Tibetan. Starts about midway. Okay, let me get a little. Okay, now it starts. Jangchub is bodhicitta. So that is that beautiful prayer, Bodhicitta, excellent and precious mind. Where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. And that's the youngest class at Samtenling Nunnery in Tibet. Sorry, in India, the Tibetan nuns in India. Okay, I'm going to sign off now, and please keep discussion going if you like, and see you in a couple of weeks. And if you can, take a few minutes each day to go into that spark and nurture that spark.
Thank you, Khenmo.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I just want to make a quick comment on watching those young nuns singing the prayer. It was like at the far corners of the universe could hear it. And we in our Western culture, I think that's part of that be in church we're talking about some of that original sin and being quiet and being humble. We don't belt out our prayers and aspirations and wishes for the world. We just like, I am doing it. And I just loved their like, you could hear it probably walking by the building. You could have heard it from, a football field away. And, I just loved that. It was so inspiring.
I really love this, and Kelly, I loved what you contributed. I've been sitting with you so many Saturdays, and I didn't know that that's what you do. So it was kind of inspiring to hear what you offer to the world so often, and thank you for sharing that. I also love the analogy of skating, being an Olympic skater. That was so funny. I think we're all heading out to the frozen pond and buying our ice skates at this point, I love that.
That really is interesting. It's such an important point. It seems to have the intention, kind of habitually, I think we tend to live without intention. It's so important. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. It's so totally essential to the whole tradition, but still it's easy to forget. Yeah. And Miriam, thank you so much. You did a great job.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful today.
Yes, our little Sangha village, Catherine and Miriam and Bob, all behind the scenes making this happen. So thank you so much. I'll ask Khenmo for a link to the little nuns singing the Bodhicitta prayer, because it's so sweet. I was about to ask her, but I'll get it and I'll put it on our resource page.
Good. That'll be great.
I'm so happy she was able to come, and there's something very particular in this lineage with Bodhicitta that is like a different flavor from other lineages. It's very special. And I feel Khenmo really carries it, and I really wanted her to be with us. So I'm so happy.
So to be clear, she's in the Drikung lineage, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's Garchen Rinpoche's lineage. And for those who don't know, Garchen Rinpoche's my first teacher and my heart teacher. And he spent 20 years in a Chinese labor camp and is just like, he is just love. There's no one home, just the sun. So like the Dalai Lama.
Thank you so much for arranging, and everybody, for this, because I really think you're so right on. It just connects so beautifully. And Marcia's comment with the sustainable compassion and the way that Khenmo describes and uses metaphors, and her language was so very vivid and helpful. So just wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone.
I also want to encourage, if you're able to come to the retreats, Khenmo's going to do a Wednesday night talk before the Saturday retreat, which will share a lot of the concepts for the retreat. And then there'll be a Wednesday Q&A after the one-day retreat. But she's going to be teaching from this meditation system that her teacher developed for Westerners. And what is really kind of amazing about it is that they've taken some of the yogic energy practices to kind of clear the energy from the body and mind to really support you in dropping in with a kind of clear mind and a body at ease as you practice. And I have known these practices were kind of missing for many of us in the West, but they used to not be available unless you were in 3-year retreat. And her teacher, who's the head of the lineage, has opened them up and authorized her to teach some of them to us. And they are really something. If you struggle with a bouncy mind in practice or a body that can't get comfortable, I have found it brings me into a state that I could usually only access after like a long retreat. So I really want to encourage you guys, if you're able to attend those 2 retreats, it's a precious opportunity. We've been working hard to arrange it. I don't know if we'll be able to be at our Dharma Center, but I suppose anything is possible. Yeah.
Hi, I'd like to just agree with Sue on this, because I've been studying with Khenmo for 2 years in this lineage that she's teaching, and it is really profound. It is one of the best teachings I've ever had, and she's a master meditator. And she's very clear. Her mind is very clear. And so I would encourage you to also, try to attend it. The exercises are just amazing. And they really do cause you to, or bring you to a point of centeredness and groundedness. And then you can proceed from there. And she's wonderful with the meditations like she was today, kind of giving examples and helping you along. So yeah, I would encourage you to come if you can.
Rob, I wish we could have heard your question. Yeah. Well, thank you all so much. Your cat is typing into the chat, Becky.
Yeah.
Everybody wants in on the Bodhicitta action.
Oh, yeah.
All
Sue,
right.
thank you and everybody for making this possible. It was really wonderful. Thank you so much.
Well, back in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Woo-hoo.
Bye, everyone.
Good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Lots of love. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to close it down now. Bye, everyone. Bye, Usha. Bye, Miriam. Thank you so much.
Thank you.